In this class, we're going to use the optional rotary table to create a shallow bowl. Let's start by taking a look at how to set up your rotary table and then attach it to your machine. If you're using the model 900, 1200, or 1800, your rotary table will look like this. It has a flat plate and this type of handle right here. If you're using the Revo, it's going to be a little bit different. And I'll show you how to set this up. This is the rotary table, and you'll attach the two brackets on this end with just a couple of cap screws. Then we'll need to set up and attach this plate. If we look at the back side of the waste block, you're going to notice a hole cut in the center and a series of holes around the perimeter that are pre-drilled so that you can mount the waste block to your rotary table. That hole in the center of the table, of course, is going to mount right over those 4 screws in the center. It's going to attach to the large gear like this. Keep in mind that at any time you can remove the waste block and tighten or loosen these 4 screws to adjust the tension on the gear. To mount the waste block, we'll set the block with the whole side up on the table and then just place the rotary table upside down over the waste block and turn it until the hole pattern lines up. Then, using a 3/4 inch long flathead wood screw, we'll attach the tabletop to the large gear. Then place the screw in each of the 4 holes. With the table securely in place, we are now going to attach the hand wheel onto the shaft. It will simply slide onto the end of the shaft, and then we'll use that set screw to tighten it in place. We are now ready to mount the rotary table onto the Revo. We'll start off by putting the 4 locking plates into the rails right here on the front of the machine. Now we'll take the rotary table and it'll rest on the top of this rail, and then we'll simply use a cap screw, line up the locking plate, and bolt that in place. And we can go ahead and insert the final 4 screws, simply lining up the locking plates and tightening them in place. You'll notice at this point that we have the bed too high and it interferes with the carriage. So obviously we'll need to lower the bed on the Revo. Now I have ripped a piece of stock about 3 inches wide, and I'll place it on top of the rotary table waste block right here, and then adjust the bed until the surface of that block is just even with the top of the rails. Now we'll rotate the handle until it's straight down at the 6 o'clock position, and then we'll simply scribe a line on top of the waste block. Turning this 2 turns, again going straight down, we'll scribe another line, and we'll repeat this 4 times. Now if you turn it 1 turn, we can cross square it by sketching between these cross points. This should be the center of our table. On the model 912 or 1800, we're going to set up the rotary table on the bed rails inside the machine. So we're going to start by taking a few locking plates and inserting them into the top of the inside bed rails. Now we'll go ahead and place the rotary table on the bed rails. And we can attach it with a couple of cap screws. One of the advantages of using the 1200 is that the bed is long enough. If we set the rotary table up at this end, we may be able to leave it as we're working on shorter components at the headstock end. Once the rotary table is attached to the bed, we can use that same 3-inch wide strip. Lower the bed down to give me a little clearance here, and we'll rotate the handle until, once again, it is straight down, and then we'll scribe a line. Rotate the handle 2 turns, and repeat this 4 times. Then we cross-square the table to find the center. I like to center the router table on an even number on my scale on the x-axis. So I'll loosen the 4 set screws so that I can adjust the table, and then I'll slide the carriage over the top and we'll lock it down on an even number. I'm going to lock this at 60 inches. It's easy to remember. At this point I can slide my table left or right to align a bit with the center line. Once it's in place, I'm going to take a pencil and just mark the end of the rotary table. Next time I put the rotary table on, I'll simply line it up with those marks. Now I'll tighten the 4 screws, locking the rotary table in place. At this point, I like to double check the alignment of my rotary table. If I turn the handle 2 turns, then those lines should stay in the same position in relationship to the router bit. If it moves from side to side, then I need to relay out this line. With the rotary table properly attached to the bed, we're ready to attach the stock and start cutting. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at the plans. I used the design kit to lay out the bowl, to select the router bits and position each cutter to form the shape that I needed. You can use the design kit to create your own, or if you prefer, you can purchase the plans directly from Legacy to reproduce this bowl. With the design kit, I simply selected the router bit profile I wanted to use, and of course I traced the router bit profile. This allows you to play with the arrangement of router bits and the position to get the shape that you want. It also tells you where you'll place your router to make the cut and how deep to cut. Well, next we're going to take our blank and attach it to the waste block on the rotary table, and we'll use double-sided tape to hold it in place. What we want to do is make sure that the surface of this blank is very smooth. If this surface is rough, the double-sided tape won't stick to this and it'll break loose while we're milling. This is a box elder burl, which is fairly rough, so we need to make this smooth before we attach it to the waste block. We could machine this surface off on the Legacy using a surface planing bit, but I want to show you another tool that is excellent for sanding this very smooth. This is called the sand flea. It acts very much like a joiner, only it's sanding the part. This will very quickly sand this very smooth, and it'll also make it very flat. The bowl is going to be 8 inches in diameter, so I'm going to mark 4 inches on either side of center on my rotary table. Now when we set this blank down onto the waste block, as long as we can't see those lines, we know we're going to be okay. Before I attach the double-sided tape, I'm going to use a little tack cloth and make sure that there is no sawdust left on the table or on this blank. When you attach the double-sided tape, you want to make sure that it's out at the perimeter. That will give you the best holding power. And we'll go ahead and peel off the backer right here. And we're ready to attach this to the tabletop. Lower the table to clear the carriage, and now I've put in a 2704 surface planing bit, and we're just going to machine this down until it's 2 inches thick. Now we're ready to cut it round and start adding the profile. To mill the stock round, we'll use a 2-flute straight cutter that's 1 inch in diameter. This is bit number 241. I'm going to position the carriage at 60 inches and close the split nut to lock it in place. We'll now use the Y-axis lead screw to position the router for the proper diameter and position for each cut. If we want to make this 8 inches in diameter, we have to come to 4 inches off center plus a 1/2 inch for the diameter of the cutter. I'm going to move the router an additional 1/2 inch so the bit is off the wood. And then we'll go ahead and lower the bit down a little bit. And then I'm going to step over to this side and I'll rotate the stock as I bring the cutter in to the 4.5 inches. We can see we're cutting all the way around the perimeter, so we're all right with the position of the bowl and the cutter. Now we'll go ahead and lower the router bit down and cut it down probably about halfway or 1 inch. I milled out this bowl so that we can compare this to the plans and show you how to read the plans to go step by step to create this profile. The plans are organized so you perform one step at a time. For example, the first thing that we'll do when cutting the bowl is just to waste some of the material inside here. So the first set of plans shows using a 2-flute straight cutter, and it gives you the position of the router bit and the depth of the router bit right here to mill out this inside section. On the next step, we'll change to this core box bit, and the plans will tell you the position of the cutter and also the depth of the cutter, and we'll mill that round section, which of course is the bottom of the dish here. And then we'll repeat this as we go through the various plans, showing step by step how to create every detail. Using router bit number 241, we're going to plunge it down until it just touches the surface of the blank. And then we'll zero our scale, and then we're going to lower this down 1.75 or 1 3/4 of an inch. Then we'll set the stop for the final plunge depth. Next, we'll raise the router bit, and then we'll position the router carriage at 60 inches and lock it down with a split nut. Now we'll move the router and the y-axis to 0 so it's centered on the part. Now we'll measure this depth, and it should be 1 3/4 of an inch. And it looks like we're within about 6/1000 of an inch, so that's good to go. Now we'll make the second cut around the rim here. Referring to my plans, I know that we'll start at the center and then we'll work out until we get to 2.25 inches on my y-axis scale. So I'll go ahead and position that at 2.25, and then we'll set a stop right there. The inside of the bowl is complete. Now I'm going to use a chisel just to break this loose from the table. And we'll stick this down on this face. So we're going to apply a little double-sided tape onto the waste block right here. Okay, here are the 4 marks that we made. Now, once we've cut this rim to 8 inches in diameter, we flip this over. We can simply line up that edge with those marks, and that will center the blank on the table. So I've put 4 pieces of double-sided tape on the rotary table, and then we'll just place the bowl on top of that. Now we flip the bowl over, so the inside here is gone, but we're going to be working on the outside edge. The first step is just use the 2-flute straight cutter and remove this corner. Just waste that wood. Now this time I've put the stop on the back side of the split nut because we're going to be milling into 3.5 inches. Keep in mind that when the bowl is flipped over, you don't have near as much contact surface with the double-sided tape. So these cuts need to be made with very light passes and cut a little bit slower than normal. You can see from this drawing that we're going to use the round-over bit. We're going to set the shoulder of the bit on the surface of the wood to set the plunge depth, and then we're going to cut in from the outside towards the center with a stop set at 2.875 or 2 7/8 of an inch. For this last cut, we're going to use the core box bit number 808. This is the only time that we'll make the cut in 2 plunge depths. The first time, we'll plunge down and make sure we cut the top of this bead, or the top of this shoulder right here, and the second time, we'll cut it full depth. Now this router bit produces this radius on the lip and gives us this nice little rim with a relief on the bottom. Now I'm going to use a chisel to gently lift this off the rotary table. That completes the bowl. Now let me show you real quickly a couple variations of this same design. This bowl is created directly from the plans. This one is a slight variation. It's not quite as deep, but we use the same cutters. And on the back side, we use the indexing capabilities of the rotary table to give us the scalloped edge. Using the core box bit, each cut is made by rotating the table a quarter of a turn, and then make a cut, and then rotate the handle a quarter of a turn again, and repeat that all the way around the circumference. This is the same router bits, obviously a larger diameter, and this is taken from a cross-section of a tree, and so we've got the bark left on the outside. We like that effect, so we just let this come out here naturally and flatten it off on both the top and the bottom. And then, of course, this little unique feature here inside the bowl makes it so that you can create a lid for the bowl if you wish.